The transport ship Meridian's Grace docked with Kepler station at 0347 hours, 3 days behind schedule and carrying exactly one passenger who wasn't supposed to exist. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera rubbed his eyes and checked the manifest again, but the data remained stubbornly impossible. One rescued individual, species unknown, found drifting in a damaged escape pod in the void sector where no life should have been able to survive. "Alex, you need to see this," called Dr. Sarah Kim from the medical bay, her voice carrying that particular blend of excitement and professional concern that Alex had learned to associate with discoveries that would complicate his life significantly. "Our guest is awake, and she's, well, you'll understand when you see her." Alex made his way through the station's narrow corridors, past the humming quantum processors and atmospheric recyclers that kept their small outpost habitable in the dead space between star systems. Kepler station wasn't much to look at: 32 crew members, a collection of sensor arrays, and enough firepower to discourage pirates from getting too curious about their research operations. As the station's chief xenolinguist, Alex usually spent his time analyzing radio signals from distant civilizations, not dealing with actual aliens who needed medical attention. The medical bay's isolation unit was designed for quarantine protocols, but the woman inside looked far too fragile to pose any threat. She sat on the edge of the medical bed, her bare feet not quite touching the floor, studying her surroundings with the intense focus of someone trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Her skin had a subtle silver tint that seemed to shift with the lighting, and her eyes changed color as Alex watched, cycling through shades of blue, green, and violet like aurora patterns. "Her vital signs are stable but completely unlike anything in our xenobiology databases," Sarah explained quietly. "Her cellular structure appears human at first glance, but the molecular composition is unlike anything we've seen. And Alex, she's been asking for you specifically." "For me? How does she even know I exist?" "She heard your voice over the intercom system when you were coordinating the docking procedures. Apparently, something about your linguistic patterns caught her attention." Alex activated the communication system and spoke slowly, trying several of the universal greeting protocols he'd memorized. "Hello. I'm Alex Rivera. Can you understand me?" The woman's eyes focused on him with startling intensity, and when she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. "Alex Rivera," she repeated, pronunciation perfect despite the alien quality of her speech. "You have a kind voice." "I remember kind voices. What do you remember?" Alex asked gently, settling into the chair outside the isolation unit. "Can you tell me your name?" She tilted her head, silver hair falling across her face like liquid metal. "I am Kessa." "Yes, Kessa. I was keeping something safe. Something important." Her expression grew distressed as she pressed her palms against her temples. "But I cannot remember what it was." "That's okay," Alex assured her. "Memory can return gradually after trauma. Don't force it." "Trauma," Kessa repeated the word like she was testing its weight. "Yes, there was trauma. Terrible light that ate everything, leaving only silence where voices used to be." Her eyes suddenly snapped to his with desperate intensity. "Alex Rivera, I must ask you something vital. Do you have children? Family? People whose existence brings you joy?" The unexpected question caught Alex off guard. "I have a sister on Mars colony, and parents back on Earth." "Why do you ask?" "Because I had those things too, and now they are gone, and I am afraid that soon I will forget they ever existed at all." Tears began flowing down her cheeks, but they sparkled with an inner light that made them look like liquid stars. "The silence takes memories first, then existence. I am all that remains, and I am forgetting." Alex felt his heart constrict at the raw pain in her voice. "Kessa, you're safe here. Whatever happened to your people, it can't reach you on this station." "You cannot promise that," she said quietly, but she seemed to find some comfort in his words. "However, your kindness gives me hope that perhaps some things are worth preserving, even if they must be remembered by strangers." Over the following days, Alex spent hours with Kessa, helping her recover fragments of memory while she taught him pieces of her language, which seemed to function as much through quantum resonance as through traditional linguistics. She was brilliant, with an intuitive understanding of mathematics and physics that surpassed most human experts, but her knowledge came in disconnected pieces that frustrated her efforts to create a coherent picture of her past. "I was an archivist," she said during one session, her eyes briefly flashing with pride before sadness overtook her again. "I kept the stories, the songs, the scientific discoveries of my people. 10,000 years of civilization, and I carried it all in quantum storage matrices." She touched her temples again. "But the storage was damaged when I fled, and now the information degrades a little more each day." "We could try downloading the data to our computer systems," Alex suggested. "Maybe external storage would help preserve what's left." "Your technology is not compatible with quantum memory matrices," Kessa replied. "Besides, the knowledge was never meant to be stored in machines. It was meant to live in minds, to be understood and interpreted by consciousness, not merely recorded." "Then we'll have to work on rebuilding your memories piece by piece," Alex said, though he could see the doubt in her shifting eyes. That evening, as Alex reviewed his notes on Kessa's linguistic patterns, she surprised him by activating the communication system from her side. "Alex Rivera, may I show you something?" He looked up to find her holding a small metal bracelet, its surface covered with intricate engravings that seemed to move when viewed directly. "This was my mother's," she said softly. "And her mother's before that, back through 50 generations of archivists. It contains memory triggers, symbols that help preserve important cultural information." "It's beautiful," Alex said, studying the flowing patterns that reminded him of circuit diagrams drawn by an artist. "The craftsmanship is incredible. Each mark represents a story, a piece of knowledge, a fragment of who we were." Kessa's voice grew heavy with loss. "I have been studying it for days, trying to use it to recover what I have forgotten, but the memories slip away faster than I can grasp them." Alex watched her trace the symbols with her fingertip, and noticed that where she touched, the metal seemed to pulse with faint light. "Kessa, what if the problem isn't your memory? What if the bracelet needs someone else to help activate it?" She looked up sharply. "What do you mean? You said the knowledge was meant to live in minds, to be understood by consciousness. Maybe the bracelet works by sharing memories between people, and you can't access the full data because you're trying to use it alone." For the first time since her arrival, Kessa smiled with genuine hope. "You would be willing to attempt such a connection? The process could be dangerous for a mind not adapted to quantum memory storage." Alex found himself nodding before he fully considered the implications. "If it might help you recover what you've lost, then yes. I'm willing to try." The memory sharing process was unlike anything Alex had experienced, and nothing in his xenolinguistics training had prepared him for the sensation of another consciousness gently touching his mind. As Kessa held one end of the bracelet and Alex grasped the other, the metal grew warm, then hot, then seemed to disappear entirely as their thoughts merged across the quantum bridge. Suddenly, Alex was standing in a city of impossible beauty, where buildings grew from crystallized light and the sky rippled with aurora patterns that sang in harmonious frequencies. This was Luminara, Kessa's homeworld, and through her memories he could see the Stellari people moving through their daily lives, silver-skinned beings whose emotions created visible auras around their bodies, whose children learned to manipulate quantum fields before they could walk. "We were old when your species first looked up at the stars," Kessa's voice whispered through the shared memory space. "We had built gardens on 1,000 worlds, created art from pure energy, and learned to preserve our greatest achievements in the quantum substrate that underlies all reality." Alex watched Stellari archivists working in vast libraries where information existed as living constructs of light and sound, each piece of knowledge maintained by specialists who dedicated their lives to preserving their civilization's accumulated wisdom. Kessa had been among the youngest ever chosen for the role, her mind particularly suited to the complex mathematics required to encode cultural memories in quantum matrices. "It was a perfect life," she continued, and Alex could feel the profound contentment she'd known in her work. "Until the day the sky began to disappear. The memory shifted, and Alex found himself experiencing the horror of the Great Silence firsthand. It started as a distortion at the edge of perception, a wrongness that made reality itself feel unstable. Then entire city blocks began to fade, not destroyed but simply ceasing to have ever existed, leaving behind empty spaces that the mind couldn't quite process. "What is it?" Alex asked, watching in horror as Stellari people vanished mid-conversation, their companions immediately forgetting they had ever existed. "We called it the Silence," Kessa replied, her mental voice tight with remembered terror. "It consumes memory itself, retroactively erasing civilizations from the timeline. Not death, something far worse. Complete cessation of having ever been." Through Kessa's eyes, Alex witnessed the desperate evacuation of Luminara as the silence spread across continents, consuming cities, forests, and eventually entire oceans until nothing remained but bare rock orbiting a star that had never known life. The Stellari archives fought frantically to preserve their civilization's essence in portable quantum matrices, but the silence adapted, learning to consume information as efficiently as it devoured physical matter. "I was aboard the last archive ship to escape," Kessa continued, and Alex felt her guilt at surviving when so many others had not. "We carried the compressed memories of our entire species, hoping to find a safe world where we could rebuild. But the silence followed us through hyperspace, hunting the very knowledge we sought to preserve." The memory fragmented as Kessa's emotional defenses activated, protecting Alex from the worst of her trauma. When their connection stabilized, they were back in the medical bay, both breathing heavily from the intensity of the shared experience. "How many others escaped?" Alex asked gently. "I do not know," Kessa replied, her color-shifting eyes now fixed on deep blue, which Alex was learning indicated profound sadness. "The archive ships scattered across the galaxy, each carrying different fragments of our culture. Some may have found refuge among distant stars. Others—" She shrugged, a gesture so human it reminded Alex that beneath their alien appearance, the Stellari felt loss and hope just as deeply as any human. Dr. Kim chose that moment to enter the medical bay, her tablet displaying readings that made her frown with professional concern. "Alex, I need to speak with you outside. Now." In the corridor, Sarah's expression was grim. "The quantum resonance from that memory-sharing session triggered every sensor we have. Whatever technology that Bracelet uses, it's broadcasting signals across multiple dimensions." "Broadcasting to who?" "That's what worries me. I'm reading massive spatial distortions at the edge of our sensor range, and they're getting stronger. Something big is coming this way, and I don't think it's friendly." Alex felt ice forming in his stomach. "The silence." Kessa said it follows quantum signatures. "Then we need to evacuate, immediately." Sarah was already activating the station's emergency protocols. "I'll start prepping the emergency pods while you—" "While I what? Abandon her?" Alex shook his head. "Sarah, she's the last survivor of an entire civilization. We can't just leave her here." "We can't save her if we're all dead," Sarah pointed out reasonably. "Alex, whatever's coming is beyond our ability to fight or understand. The best we can do is get everyone to safety and hope the evacuation ships arrive before." The lights flickered, and through the viewports, Alex could see the stars beginning to fade one by one, not dimming but simply ceasing to exist as the silence consumed the space around them. The station's hull groaned as reality itself became unstable, and emergency alarms began wailing throughout the facility. "Too late," Alex said grimly. "We're out of time." Back in the medical bay, Kessa was standing at the viewport, watching the approach of the entity that had destroyed her world with an expression of resigned acceptance. "It has found me," she said without turning around. "I am sorry, Alex Rivera. I had hoped to have more time to recover what was lost." "It's not over yet," Alex said, moving to stand beside her. "You said the archives contain the seeds of your civilization. Is there a way to preserve them even if the silence reaches us?" "Only one," Kessa replied, finally meeting his eyes. But it would require a sacrifice that I cannot ask of you. Try me. The quantum matrices can be integrated with a compatible consciousness, permanently storing Stellari culture in a living mind. But the process would change you forever, making you something between human and Stellari, carrying the memories of 10,000 years within your thoughts. Alex looked out at the dying stars, then back at Kessa's desperate hope, and made the easiest decision of his life. Then that's what we'll do. Alex, Kessa whispered, her voice breaking with emotion, you cannot understand what you are offering. You would become the living repository of my entire species, responsible for preserving and protecting our essence for as long as you live. I understand enough, Alex replied, taking her hand and feeling the warmth of her silver skin. I understand that some things are worth preserving, no matter the cost. Outside the viewport, the silence was almost upon them, reality unraveling like a tapestry with pulled threads. But in the medical bay of Kepler Station, two beings from different worlds prepared to ensure that the light of an ancient civilization would continue to shine, even in the darkness between stars. The transformation chamber in Kepler Station's quantum laboratory had been designed for theoretical research into consciousness transfer, never intended for the desperate preservation of an entire civilization's memories. As Kessa worked frantically to configure the systems using Stellari quantum principles, Alex found himself remarkably calm despite the fact that reality was literally coming apart around them. You know, he said, watching through the viewports as another section of space simply ceased to exist, leaving behind a hole in the universe that hurt to look at directly. When I applied for this posting, the recruitment officer mentioned opportunities for cultural exchange. I'm pretty sure this wasn't what they had in mind. Kessa's laugh was like silver bells, even as her hands moved with desperate precision over controls that seemed to respond to her thoughts as much as her touch. Among my people, we have a saying. The universe has a sense of humor, but its timing is terrible. I like your people already, Alex replied, then winced as the station shuddered around them. How long do we have? Minutes, perhaps less. Kessa gestured to the transformation platform, which now pulsed with the same ethereal light as her bracelet. Alex, I must warn you one final time, this process will change everything about who you are. Your consciousness will expand to contain not just your own memories, but the accumulated experiences of millions of Stellari across 10 millennia. You may lose yourself in the vastness of it all. Or I might find something I never knew I was looking for, Alex countered, stepping onto the platform despite the way his rational mind was screaming warnings. Kessa, every xenolinguist dreams of perfect understanding between species. This is that dream made real. Dr. Kim's voice crackled through the intercom, tight with controlled panic. Alex, Tommy's finished the evacuation prep, but the emergency pods won't launch while those spatial distortions are active. Whatever you're planning to do, do it fast. Tommy's still here? Alex asked, surprised. The engineering chief had a wife and daughter waiting for him back on Earth. Someone has to keep the quantum processors stable during your little consciousness merger, came Tommy's reply through the comm system. Besides, I figure if we're all about to be erased from existence, I might as well go out doing something scientifically impossible. It'll look great on my obituary. Kessa began the integration sequence, and Alex felt the first tendrils of alien thought touching his mind. It was overwhelming and beautiful, like standing at the edge of an ocean of pure knowledge and diving in without knowing how to swim. Stellari memories flowed through his consciousness. Mathematical theorems that described the fundamental structure of reality, artistic techniques that painted with quantum probability, philosophical insights that had guided a species through millions of years of peaceful development. I can see it all, Alex gasped, his enhanced perception now detecting the silence as it consumed the final barriers protecting Kepler Station. The entity wasn't malicious in any human sense, it was more like a cosmic immune system, perceiving advanced consciousness as a threat to universal stability and responding with methodical elimination. It's not evil, Kessa. It's afraid. Afraid of what? She asked, her own transformation beginning as the quantum matrices synchronized their consciousness with the preserved Stellari archives. Of us. Of what we become when we grow too powerful, too knowledgeable, too able to manipulate the fundamental forces of existence. Alex's expanded awareness could now perceive the mathematical structures underlying reality, and he could see how advanced civilizations could accidentally destabilize the quantum foundations of space-time itself. The silence isn't trying to destroy us, it's trying to protect the universe from us. The revelation came with perfect clarity as their merged consciousness accessed the deepest layers of stellar historical records. Advanced species throughout galactic history had repeatedly discovered technologies that threatened universal stability, artificial black holes used as weapons, consciousness expansion techniques that could rewrite local reality, quantum manipulation that could unravel the fabric of space-time itself. Then how do we stop it? Kessa asked, her mental voice now permanently intertwined with his own thoughts. We don't stop it, Alex replied, understanding flooding through him as the transformation completed and his consciousness became a living repository of stellar wisdom. We prove that we're not a threat. We show it that some species can advance without becoming destroyers. The silence reached Kepler station, and reality began to unravel around them, but Alex and Kessa stood together in the quantum laboratory, their merged consciousness now capable of perceiving the entity's true nature. Using techniques preserved in the deepest stellar archives, methods for communicating with cosmic forces that operated beyond traditional physics, they reached out to the silence with a message of peace and understanding. We seek harmony, not dominance, Alex projected through quantum channels that shouldn't have existed. We preserve rather than destroy. We offer cooperation rather than conquest. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The silence paused in its consumption of local spacetime, its attention focusing on the strange hybrid consciousness that dared to speak to it as an equal. For the first time in its existence spanning millions of years, the cosmic entity encountered a species that had learned to advance without becoming a threat to universal stability. It's working, Kessa whispered, and Alex could feel her wonder through their shared thoughts. The silence is listening. Around them, the dissolution of reality slowed, then stopped, then gradually began to reverse as the entity recognized that this particular civilization might be worth preserving after all. Stars flickered back into existence, and the twisted space around Kepler station slowly returned to its normal configuration. Alex, Tommy's voice came through the intercom, filled with amazement and relief. I don't know what you two did in there, but the spatial distortions are dissipating. We're going to live through this. We did more than that, Alex replied, his voice now carrying the same harmonic qualities as Kessa's. We just taught the universe that some species can grow up without becoming monsters. 6 months after the silence departed, Alex stood in his new laboratory aboard the exploration vessel Cultural Bridge, watching the data streams from dozens of archaeological sites where stellar refugees had established hidden colonies throughout the galaxy. The transformation had left him changed in ways both profound and subtle. His eyes now shifted through the same spectrum of colors as Kessa's, his mind could process quantum information as naturally as reading text, and his consciousness carried the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that had once spanned star systems. Any luck with the Andromeda signals? Kessa asked, materializing beside him with the silent grace that all Stellari possessed. She had chosen to remain corporeal rather than existing purely as quantum consciousness, claiming that physical form helped her maintain connection to the present rather than losing herself in archived memories. 3 more colonies confirmed, Alex replied, highlighting new contact points on the galactic map. The survivors are scattered, but they're alive and slowly rebuilding. Your people are remarkably resilient. Resilient and grateful, Kessa said, her hand finding his with the easy familiarity of shared consciousness. The quantum message I received this morning from the Vega colony included a formal request for you to visit as their honored guest. Apparently, saving an entire species from extinction earns considerable social status among the Stellari. I should probably update my resume, Alex said with a grin. First human xenolinguist to prevent universal erasure, available for diplomatic consultations and consciousness-bridging services. Their conversation was interrupted by Tommy's voice over the ship's intercom, as cheerful as ever despite the fact that his engineering duties now included maintaining technology that operated on principles that hadn't existed 6 months ago. Alex, we've got company. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace, and they're broadcasting Stellari identification codes. Through the bridge viewports, Alex watched a small fleet of vessels approach, their hulls shimmering with the same quantum crystalline construction he remembered from Kessa's shared memories. These ships were different from the elegant curves of Stellari architecture, more angular, purposeful, built for long journeys through hostile space rather than aesthetic beauty. Refugee ships, Kessa said softly, her eyes brightening with hope and trepidation. Survivors from the outer colonies, finally brave enough to risk quantum communication now that the silence has moved on to other regions of the galaxy. The lead vessel docked with practiced efficiency, and soon the cultural bridge was host to an impromptu reunion of species. The Stellari refugees were a mix of archivists, scientists, and ordinary citizens who had managed to escape their doomed worlds with fragments of their civilization intact. Many carried quantum storage devices similar to Kessa's bracelet, each containing pieces of the vast cultural puzzle they were trying to reassemble. Lord Archivist, said the refugee leader, an elderly Stellari woman whose silver skin bore the intricate tattoos that marked her as a master of memory preservation. We have heard impossible tales of a human who carries our archives in his mind. Is this true? Alex stepped forward, his enhanced consciousness automatically interfacing with the quantum fields emanating from the assembled Stellari. I carry what Kessa preserved, he said, his voice now carrying the harmonic resonances that made direct translation unnecessary. But more importantly, I carry the understanding that your knowledge doesn't have to be lost. The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Several of the refugees began weeping with relief, their emotional auras creating rainbow patterns that filled the ship's corridors with living light. Others approached with quantum storage devices extended, eager to share their own preserved fragments of Stellari culture. We can rebuild, the elder archivist said, her voice filled with wonder. Not our worlds, perhaps, but our people. The quantum seeds can be planted in new minds, new societies, new civilizations that understand the value of preservation over conquest. Over the following hours, Alex found himself at the center of a cultural restoration project that spanned multiple species. Human volunteers from Earth had arrived to help with the process, their minds proving surprisingly compatible with Stellari quantum memory techniques. The refugees shared their preserved knowledge freely, and slowly, the vast library of Stellari civilization began to take shape in a distributed network of consciousness that no single catastrophe could erase. It's working, Kessa said, watching as human and Stellari minds linked together in quantum harmony, each person carrying and preserving pieces of the ancient civilization while retaining their own identity and purpose. We are not rebuilding what was lost, we are creating something new. Dr. Kim, who had insisted on joining the mission despite her tendency to make nervous jokes about alien biology, was reviewing the integration data with obvious fascination. The symbiosis is incredible. The human volunteers are gaining enhanced cognitive abilities while the Stellari fragments are finding new contexts for expression. It's like watching two species evolve together in real time. Speaking of evolution, Tommy called from the engineering station, I'm reading quantum signatures from multiple star systems. Word is spreading that someone figured out how to preserve civilizations from cosmic erasure. We've got refugee ships from at least 6 different species requesting assistance with their own cultural preservation projects. Alex looked at the growing fleet of vessels surrounding their position, each representing another species that had lost worlds to the silence or similar cosmic threats, each carrying fragments of knowledge and culture that deserved to survive. The task ahead was enormous, but for the first time since the crisis began, he felt truly hopeful. Kessa, he said, taking her hand as they watched the stars whirl past beyond the viewports, there's something I need to ask you. Ask. Your bracelet, you said it belonged to 50 generations of archivists. What happens when you give it away? Kessa smiled, her eyes cycling through every color of the spectrum before settling on warm gold. When an archivist gives away their memory keeper, it means they have found something more precious than the past to preserve. She pressed the worn metal into his palm, her fingers lingering over the ancient symbols. It means they have found hope for the future. This means don't forget me, she added quietly, her voice carrying layers of meaning that his enhanced consciousness could fully appreciate. Not just my face or my words, but what we accomplished together. The proof that kindness can survive any catastrophe, that compassion can bridge any gap between species, and that sometimes the most important discoveries come not from conquest but from connection. Alex closed his fingers around the bracelet, feeling the quantum matrices within respond to his hybrid consciousness with warm acceptance. Around them, the ship hummed with the voices of dozens of species working together to preserve what was precious in the universe, each mind carrying fragments of civilizations that refused to be forgotten. "I won't forget," he promised, and through their shared consciousness, Kessa felt the absolute truth of his words. "I'll carry your people's memories, your culture, your dreams, and I'll make sure the universe remembers that the Stellari chose to preserve beauty rather than create weapons." As the cultural bridge set course for the next refugee fleet, Alex realized that his transformation was complete in ways that went far beyond biology. He had become something unprecedented, a living bridge between species, a keeper of memories that spanned galaxies, and proof that sometimes the greatest acts of heroism began with the simple decision to show kindness to a stranger.